Good morning, it's Pam. So we have the lawnmower going on outside, the dogs barking at the lawnmower, me still in a sweatshirt this morning, and then I realized if I wait for the perfect time, I will never get on Facebook. So I figured I'd go ahead and do this taping anyway. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about what you should ask your bookkeepers if you're either thinking of switching to a new bookkeeper or getting one to start out with, and I wanted to expand on one of those questions today because it's probably the most important one of the four questions we talked about yesterday. But first off, just in case this is the first time you are listening to one of these little tidbits here, I am Pam Pryor, the author of Your First CFO, the accounting cure for small business owners, and host of the radio show Cash Flow. And we'll be actually recording some more segments for that tomorrow. And when I do that, I always do a Facebook Live of that. So look for that if you want to get even more in-depth tips on making finance fun for entrepreneurs. If you're a small business owner or entrepreneur, that is my goal, to convince you that finance can be fun. My dog in the background apparently agrees. So thanks a lot. I have a Facebook page where I think you're finding this, although it gets shared out a bit, so you may be seeing it elsewhere, but look for that Facebook page. It is at PS Pryor, at PS Pryor. And I also have a YouTube channel, and I'm on LinkedIn. You name it, I'm kind of out there right now. So very glad to have you listening. I appreciate it. One of the biggest things that my clients and anybody I talk to, really, and I have talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs over the last year as I've started to bring Fortune 500 level finance quality down to smaller businesses in a way that doesn't overburden them but gives them exactly what they need as business owners to run the business. And what I've heard kind of consistently is I have a bookkeeper. Either I don't really see anything that makes sense to me from that bookkeeper, I don't get anything from that bookkeeper, I can never reach them. When I do get information, it never makes sense, and all of those sorts of questions. So one of the things I really focus on is making sure that when you get your bookkeeper, not only do you get the right bookkeeper, but you set them up to succeed on your behalf. And the whole point there is that the bookkeeper's there to serve you, not the other way around, and also not to serve only the tax accountant. And there are ways to make sure that you want your tax accountant served, absolutely, but the top priority is getting your needs served as the owner of that business. So, question that comes up, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, is how do I do that? How do I make sure I get the right bookkeeper in place? And we talked about 4 questions that I think you should ask any prospective bookkeeper in order to sort of pin down whether or not they're the type of bookkeeper that's going to be a good fit for you. Back up a second, and it also gives you an overall introduction to what they're like, their personality, whether you guys mesh, which is really important because the extent to which you feel comfortable talking to your bookkeeper, it determines how much, how often, and how well the two of you will communicate during the relationship. So the 4 overall questions were: number 1, find out what type of bookkeeper it is. So is it a single hang a shingle guy, and there are advantages and disadvantages to that, which we'll talk about on another little episode here. The second is ask them what questions they need to ask you in order to serve you properly. Now I'm going to circle back to that one because that's the one I actually want to dive a little more deeply on today. The third is, of course, what is their cost model, their pricing, to make sure it fits your model, your profitability needs, your cash flow needs. And then the fourth is, when do they deliver the reports for you on a monthly basis? So we can dive into the others on another episode here, but I did want to dive in on what kind of questions your bookkeeper should ask you. So let me restate what I said there. What I think you ought to ask any potential prospective bookkeeper is, what questions do you need to ask me so that you can serve my bookkeeping needs. And that was you talking to your prospective bookkeeper. And I want to just go through the kinds of things that I would expect that bookkeeper to ask you in order to be able to serve you well. And frankly, if they don't ask you these questions in response to this question on your part, then they may or may not either have the capacity to serve you in a timely manner, like they've got too many clients, or they are typically bookkeepers who serve tax accountants. So let's just go through the list of things that a savvy, high-quality bookkeeper is going to ask you. The first would be, how many banks do you use for your business? Second would be, there's no order to these questions. I just hope they covered all these. Do you blend your personal and business bank accounts? How many credit cards do you have? Are you willing to share, download access to those bank accounts and credit cards? How do you think about your business? And to me, here is the most critical question. They should ask you how you think about your business. And in listening to you describe that, say that you say, and I'm just going to pick an example here, I am a fitness coach and virtual fitness coach, and I do group training, I do one-on-one training in my gym, and I sell a training package. So what I would hope that your bookkeeper would echo back to you then is, all right, so you think of your business as having 3 sort of separate product lines. Those are the kinds of questions you really want them to ask. The other thing they might ask along the same vein is, how do you think about your customers? Do you have VIP customers versus just product customers? How do your customers pay you is another question they should ask. Another kind of area that they should think about and ask you about is, do you have both W-2 kind of full employees, or do you use only outsourced contractors? Do you have a payroll service? So these are all questions that I would ask. I'm going to actually make a list of these questions and stick it on to the comments here so that you have access to it. And somehow attach it to this when I load it to YouTube. Haven't figured that out yet, but I will. And give you a series of questions. The other thing I will say is that a big chunk of these questions is also in the Your First CFO book, which is available from my website, which is pampryor.com. It's available free in PDF form. I'm able to get that to anybody who needs it right now. I have gotten word that within 3 weeks now, I hope, I'll be getting the hard copies of the book, and that will probably limit my capacity to give out the free PDFs for a little while. But right now I can do that. So if this particular topic is of any interest to you, or anything related to making finance fun in your business, please feel free to message me, put a comment here, send this to a friend, share it with a friend who might get something of value out of the book or any of the tools on my website. So that's sort of where we are. That the bottom line with these questions that your bookkeeper should ask you, just to circle back here, is they should really be asking you questions. The bottom line is you want them to fully understand how you think about your business. Because the idea there is every bookkeeper's tools, whether it's Excel or QuickBooks or FreshBooks or SAP, for God's sake, if you're a huge manufacturing firm, every single one of those products has the capacity in it to use that tool, and you, for God's sake, don't need to understand how they make the sausage, except to know that the tools are there for the bookkeepers to make this information useful to you. And you want to make sure they do that, because historically what's happened is we often get bookkeepers just to get stuff to the accountant so we don't have to deal with taxes. And that's, a beautiful thing, but there's also just a ton of information, rich information, not just data, not just junk, but real decision supporting information in those numbers. And with just a few questions to your bookkeeper, you can switch from, I can't even look at these numbers, my head's going to explode, they make no sense to me, from that to, I can't wait to see my report this month. I want it even earlier than I used to get it, because when I look at it, I see the things I need to do this month to have a better month this month. And that's what we're trying to get to. You need to get information just like you do in marketing, just like you do with sales, just like you do with how you're providing your operations. You want to get immediate and good feedback on how you're performing. And the earlier you get that and the more you can rely on it, and the less tempted you are to just shove it in a drawer and ignore it, the more it's going to help you serve your business, add value to your business, and grow it. So that's really what we are after. Bookkeepers have the tools to do this. There's so many of you out there who are so frustrated with your bookkeeping and reporting. Without a lot of cost, we can turn that corner and start to make this information really meaningful for you. And I will tell you that it has changed the trajectory of at least 2 or 3 clients who started to look at things a little bit differently. And I dare say that even at this point, they would say finance is fun, because now it's a real tool in their business as opposed to a nuisance, a headache, something hanging over their heads that, I know I need to understand this. And if I don't understand this, my business could fail tomorrow, but I'll deal with that tomorrow. Sort of the Gone with the Wind theory, when Scarlett's at the door and says something about I'll deal with that tomorrow, or I don't know that line exactly. Somebody will correct me. So anyway, it's so easy to turn from aggravation to actual enthusiasm about those financials, and it really starts with this initial conversation with your bookkeeper. So if you can make sure you're hiring the right bookkeeper out of the gate, that is huge. And these are some of the questions that can help you do that. So let me put this little checklist together for you of questions your bookkeeper should be asking you, and I will drop it in the comments. Meanwhile, you all have a fantastic day, and I continue to send prayers and thoughts to Houston. I noticed that Disney and ABC have started a massive fundraiser all day today, I believe. So if you pop on Channel 6 in Philly or ABC wherever you are, you can see how to contribute through to the Red Cross there. And here comes my lawnmower, so it's a good time for me to check out. But thanks so much, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care.